So just really like to welcome you all. My name is Janine Kirby. I'm the chairperson of the Institute of Mindfulness of South Africa, and we're really excited about the offering that we have this evening, and really excited about having people who are really experts in their fields from all over the world joining us. So we have Willoughby Britton joining us. Thank you for joining us and welcome, Willoughby. Willoughby is, and I have to get my notes, she's currently the director of Brown University's Clinical and Affective Neuroscience Laboratory, which investigates the psychophysiological and neurocognitive effects of cognitive training and mindfulness-based interventions for mood and anxiety disorders. I'm sure we'll hear more about that. Also, Paula Ramírez is joining us, and she has an MA in conflict transformation. She's an MBSR teacher from the University of San Diego in California, and a trauma-sensitive yoga facilitator from the Trauma Center. Paula has been directing RESPIRA in Colombia, which is now Breathe International since 2013, where through mindfulness, somatic bodywork, and anthropology, she's worked in very difficult areas, in conflict-affected areas with survivors of torture, gender-based violence, and landmines in Colombia and South Sudan. And also thank you to Mandy Johnson. Mandy is one of our previously served as a director of IMISA, and Mandy's going to be facilitating the session. She's a master coach, and she's taught both the mindfulness-based stress reduction program as well as mindfulness-based relapse prevention programs. And she's a supervisor on the current IMISA Stellenbosch University postgraduate training course. So welcome to all of you, and I'll hand you over to Mandy. Thank you. Welcome.
A really warm welcome to everyone. So lovely to be with you all. And I see there's a huge amount, 65 people. So I'll just take a deep breath. Welcome, Willoughby and Paula. We said we'd trust emergence, so we see how it goes. But thank you to MISA and for the opportunity. It's really wonderful to be with you all. So I thought maybe we could just start, because part of mindfulness is recognizing what you need. So perhaps just briefly in this moment, you might just take a pause and look at what nourishes you right now, what you might need right now in this moment. So to settle the body mind as we do, perhaps for you that might be finding the breath in the body. So maybe for some of you that might be finding the breath. Perhaps for some of you it might be moving in a particular way. So you can choose for yourself how you'd like to move, whether you want to move the shoulders, or perhaps for some of you, it might be getting up, getting a cup of tea, maybe even just getting a blanket close by, anything that will soothe you during the session. Just check in with yourself right now. What do you need? What's most nourishing for you? And you might put your camera off, you might close your eyes, you might keep your eyes open. There's really no prescribed way to be right now. Just what do you need? So I'm going to give you a few moments just to engage with that in whatever way. So for me, I think I'm going to be focusing on the breath, just for a few cycles of breath. What is it that you need? Still just noticing the mind, noticing the body, just bringing that sense of presence and kindness, compassion for yourself. So remembering that at any point we can just stop and check in with ourselves in this way. What do we need? What can support us in being present? So thank you. One of the first things Willoughby taught me when I reached out to her was the difference between willingness A lot of you might have a lot of willingness and very limited capacity. So just a reminder. So welcome everyone. So I'm up to tell my story, and I'm hoping that the story in many ways encourages you to understand how trauma can be reactivated, and encourages you to look into your own experience of meditation and mindfulness over the years and see if there's not some similarities or some things that come up, and be gentle with yourselves if that is the case. I think there are very few individuals in this world right now that aren't affected by trauma in one way or the other. So during the session tonight, just to notice what the impact of my words or what I'm saying might have on you, and then to be gentle with that. So I first came into MBSR when I was 31. So that's exactly 20 years ago. So it's quite a lot of time that I've spent with this practice. And I came into the practice, I came into MBSR having just come off a panic attack and had my first panic attack, but probably diagnosed with generalized anxiety back then. And that was the attack, the panic attack was as a result of my mom just passing away. So she'd passed away the year before from alcoholism, and she'd had a very long history with her struggles with bipolar and alcoholism. And so I only realized at the time of coming into MBSR that I was struggling with not only codependency, but something that I work with now with all my clients, which is adult children of dysfunction or adult children of alcoholics. So if some of you don't know what that is, it's really useful to look that up. But what I thought I might do is just describe for you quickly what an adult child might look like. So they're terrified of abandonment. They're afraid of people in authority. They have addictive personalities, so they're obsessive in their thinking and compulsive in the way that they show up in the world. They shut down feelings by nature, and they judge themselves very harshly. They're approval seekers, self-sacrificial, and react as opposed to respond. So I think my early teachers can remember that person coming into an MBSR. And as you know, with generalized anxiety, there's a tendency to feel very restless and on edge, irritable. There's a lot of muscle tension. There's fatigue, trembling, feeling shaky as it is. So those combinations of traumas coming into MBSR was quite a story. But I did really benefit initially, although I could already recognize back then that certain things were quite triggering for me, one being the body scan, lying down amongst a whole lot of people, and then staying silent on the first day retreat. I think I lasted about an hour, and some of my teachers will know I went back into the car, sat in the car and blasted out some rock music just to survive. I thought I was going a little bit mad that first one-day retreat. But I learned three things from MBSR over the years, and I want to say that the practice has also really supported me. One is that I'm not my thoughts and feelings, which for me was a huge thing, because adult children, they tend to feel everything so hugely. It feels like you are the feeling. Then the ability to step back, to observe, and the ability to cultivate that observer, which means to train it in kindness. And then the ability to be with difficult feelings to a degree. So what happened in 2018, as a lot of you know, in the IMISA community, we had a conference in Marapeng. That was 2018. And it was just before I had committed to a 30-day silent retreat. And there was some trigger events precursor to that going on that retreat, which I should have actually taken more seriously. But adult children, if anything, they rely on these overdeveloped resources, and sometimes they're actually to your detriment. So one of them was I had just completed oh, someone's jumped in. I will talk above this little being so that I can continue. Are we all settled? Okay, good, lovely. So the triggers to precipitate the going to the 30-day silent retreat. One was I had just done a revolution of being very deep 3-month process, an Adyashanti retreat. And as a result of that, meditating 3-4 hours a day, what I recognized that I had an attack of tinnitus, which I shared with Willoughby in the beginning. So I had this huge relapse. Well, it's the first time I've ever experienced tinnitus, and somehow those two things were related. I didn't know how in the beginning. And then I had also just switched doctors. I'd had cancer I was diagnosed with cancer at 42, and my doctor, funnily enough, that was treating me had actually passed away unexpectedly. So I had to find a new ENT. And that also just made me incredibly anxious. I didn't put it all together in the beginning. And then, just the advent of menopause. And I don't even need to speak about that because all the ladies in this room that are of a certain age know exactly what that's all about. I was teaching 3-4 times a week. I was holding very big groups, lots of traumatized groups, especially in recovery. And so that was the precursor to going to this retreat. What I didn't understand getting to the silent retreat was another set of triggers that set me off. And I only put it together after the event. But at the time, when we were picked up at the airport going to this retreat, we were picked up in a sort of like a combi. And I didn't know any of the people. And I'm sure a lot of you know how this is when you're kind of anxious and you're already with a whole lot of strangers out of your comfort zone. But as we were driving, it was pouring with rain, very misty, and we were going through the Drakensberg. And as we came around the corner, misty, there was a car accident. There'd been a car accident, and the car flipped over, and it was right in front of us. And that must have been the first sort of traumatic memory. My dad died in a car accident when I was 12. I've been in a car accident. So I didn't put it all together, but I was a little bit thrown. We couldn't see anything. So we arrived very late at the retreat in the dark, raining, pouring, Drakensberg, don't know what it looks like. And we went into this like little eating hall. And as I was standing talking to the retreat master, a couple of bats flew into the kitchen. So some people love bats. I do not love bats. And I have a memory of bats as a child, and it freaked me out completely. At the orientation session, the retreat masters were talking about two things. One was the baboons and the other were the snakes. We must just not worry about snakes. All will be well, just don't mess with them. So that was another thing in the back of my mind. All of that compounded by the fact that I wasn't living on the premises. I had to walk to just about maybe 800-900 meters away, but in the dark with baboons, snakes, and various other creatures, my nervous system was becoming completely dysregulated. I noticed the tinnitus was getting louder. The menopausal symptoms were getting louder. That was day one. I hadn't even started. And so I persevered, came into it, and we started at 5 in the morning, and we continued all the way through till 9. There was a Dharma talk at night. And I just noticed that I couldn't seem to self-regulate. Everything I was trying was totally out of my window of tolerance. I was increasingly, my mind was going into dark places. I couldn't understand it. I felt like I was dissociating, and I felt like I couldn't talk to anyone. It's not that, it's just, I was the only sort of non-Buddhist at that retreat, and I knew that to be the case. So I want to just read something to you that I actually wrote after the fact. Willoughby asked me to write my story down. And I'm just going to read because I think it will be the easiest way to do this. But it's just a brief understanding of where I was. So it goes like this. So at this retreat, from the beginning, I felt a sense of being an imposter. I was not bowing to the Buddha or entering the shrine room. I was positioned in front of a pole to avoid having to bow. It is not my belief. On a lighter note, which caused me to smile internally when I first saw to the left of where I sat on our cushion was a small statue of Jesus on a cross. I really couldn't believe it. So I felt comforted by this image, which was unusual. And I'm painfully aware now that religion or symbols of religion can never be part of a mindfulness approach. It's my belief. We'll talk a little bit about that. It has to be a neutral to allow for safety. Everyone has his or her own sacred belief, and it needs to be honored. So, however, I knew this was a Buddhist retreat, so the format was made very clear to me. I just never expected this aversion to come up, and there's almost trauma to come up around this, and it has stayed with me subsequently, which is very interesting. I'm still dealing with that. So by my final night, lying in the dark, wondering whether there were snakes under my bed, bats in the corner, baboons barking in the distance, I could barely breathe and could not stand to be there any longer. My heart was beating so loud, I was almost sure it would wake the other women in the room who seemed to be sailing through this retreat. This just compounded my sense of failure, my sense of shame. I felt like a 6-year-old trapped and panicked all over with no one to come to rescue me. So that's how it was. And I also write here, I don't wish to criticize the retreat leaders as they are beautiful people I admire, but to date, after alerting them, I was not coping and was going to leave to go home. I've not had a call or an email, and I feel this is very strange, spending all that time chanting compassion practice and all that intention of heart connection, but not so much as a check-in seems very strange to me. And I've been made so aware of the importance of following up with participants and making that a priority. So feeling as if I had somehow failed or disappointed others only served to amplify my distress when I got home. It might have been useful to be told that negative experiences on silent retreats happen more often than we are aware, and to much more experienced practitioners, which subsequently is what happened. So that is my story. I came back from the retreat. I was fairly broken. I reached out to my directors, Simon Lind, and the people in my group. They were unbelievably kind and compassionate. I came back into therapy and I reached out to Willoughby and joined Cheetah House's support group, which he'll tell you about. And I'm definitely changed as a mindfulness teacher forever in various ways, which I'll maybe just be able to speak about a little later. But I think that's where I'd like to leave it, because I'm noticing in my own body how hard it is to tell that story, and how even in this moment, it's bubbling up in my throat and in my chest. So I'm going to hand over to Willoughby. And I think this is a good time to do that. So thank you. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks, Mandy. That was very brave. And also a kind of a hard act to follow, honestly. But I will say, so I studied the neurobiology of meditation and the mechanisms of both the benefits and the adverse effects of meditation. And when we published our massive study in 2017, the phone never stopped ringing of people who had negative experiences with meditation, and had never really found any help, even from the places that they'd learned meditation from. And we got so many calls that I had to start my own nonprofit organization, which is called Cheetah House. And we currently get, more than 20,000 visits a year, and we service 98 countries. And I also continue to do more research, and the more we dig into it, the more, that statement that you said, it's not that rare. It's actually much, much more common than anyone thought. And that's going to impact how we teach. So I can give you all, data if you want, but the idea is that it's really not rare, and it's probably in this room and not just Mandy. And so I just want to make a couple comments. There's a lot to unpack here, and we, are going to we're trying to hit some of the highlights and not give you like a comprehensive training. One of the first things that I want to mention is I'm not a huge fan of the term trauma. I don't really like the term trauma-informed mindfulness. I know that's the title of our session, but I think it can kind of mislead. I think it can kind of make us think that there are traumatized people like over there, and that like the rest of us are, not that. And it can have a kind of othering influence. And it can also, unfortunately lead to a kind of victim blaming approach when you talk about meditation related adverse effects. And when we have things like, we're all here to learn trauma informed mindfulness because, if you have trauma, it might cause an adverse effect. And that just puts all the blame on the meditator, when, probably more accurate is to say that, meditation related adverse effects are a consequence of interpersonal dynamics that are more associated with power and authority and agency than some kind of event that happened to the meditator or something that is inside the meditator itself. And we're also not finding that even the sort of classical trauma scales are that great at predicting who is going to have adverse effects of meditation. There are plenty of people in our study who didn't have any red flags at all, no psychotrauma history. Most of them were meditation teachers. So some of those characterizations that you were talking about, Mandy, about like the adult child of alcoholics, like high achieving people pleasers, that's more of a risk factor than, having an event in your life that's called a trauma. So I think, I'd rather call it diversity informed meditation or mindfulness, and using the broadest, meaning of the word diversity, and just to say that people are different and they have different responses and different needs and different goals. And, if we bring to the table some kind of system of practices and we offer the same practice to everyone, like, of course, it's not going to be good for everyone. So whatever we're doing here, trauma-informed mindfulness, diversity-informed mindfulness, requires a pretty radically different approach, which is sometimes subsumed under the term person-centered approach. And the idea is that we start with the person and what they need, rather than imposing a system or a set of practices or trauma-informed modifications. And so when Mandy, Paula, and I were discussing, like, how are we going to do this in an hour and a half and give them what they need? And, everybody wants, like, okay, I'm ready with my pen and paper. I'm going to take down, like, what are the trauma-informed modifications that I can make to my, my mindfulness regimen. And that would be much easier to give you, and it would be much easier to teach, but it would completely violate the entire point that we're trying to make here, which is that it just recycles the same power dynamic that is the problem, which is that we, the teachers, have the answers that we are going to impart upon you, and thereby doing that completely disempower you. So we decided to try to actually embody trauma-informed practice in real time. So this is not the simplest and easiest way to do things, but it is going to be the most loyal to the idea that I couldn't possibly, I'm in Vermont right now in the US. Like, I couldn't possibly know what you need. And I don't have the answers. So we're going to have to figure that out together in a way that you maintain your agency and power and choice. And I don't, inadvertently take it away from you by giving you, like, my great wisdom. So we're going to try a practice that I hopefully will demonstrate this to you and not just be a download from up high. So I'm going to ask for 2 extremely brave volunteers to do a little kind of demo with me. So any volunteers?
So maybe you can just put your hand up with that little hand if you can. I've done this with Willoughby. It's a beautiful process, so don't be too scared, and it will be held beautifully too.
Oh, we got one.
Have we got a hand? Oh, stunning. Thank you. Yes, lovely. Annika, lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll go then.
Thank you, Annika.
All right. Thank you, Annika. Okay. So let's just start off with a baseline. How are you feeling right now that you're like,
yeah, well,
like I am?
Since I put my hand up, like, nervous, nerves in my tummy.
Yep. And so how is that showing up for you?
Yeah, it's like in my solar plexus, like just a lot of pins and needles going on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Like moving up into my chest, area of my chest.
And which direction would you like to move in? Like, what would better be like?
For it all to just absolve and not be there, I guess. We don't want not to sit with this discomfort. Although in saying that, it is kind of dissolving.
Okay. So that's just sort of a baseline to get a sense of where you're at. And also we can all do this together. So we're going to put Annika on the spot, but all of us are, have certain, levels of activation in different ways. So just tracking yourself as we do this. So where are you right now, Annika? Are you at home?
Yes, I am at home. I'm sitting in my bed.
Excellent, excellent. So of all the things in your experience right now, like the various objects in your room, the paintings on the walls, the things you're wearing, what's the most nourishing to you right now in the state that you're in right now? When you look around, what's the most nourishing or comforting or feels the best to you right now? What's the most positive aspect of your experience?
My Yorkie is lying on my lap.
Your Yorkie is a dog.
Yeah.
And what's your Yorkie's name?
Millie.
Millie. Melly or Millie?
Millie. M-I-L-L-Y.
Millie. Okay. And so when you look at Millie, what's that impact on your system? How do you know that Millie is a resource?
Because she relaxes me and she makes me feel loved, and it's a lightness.
Mm-hmm. And where do you notice that in your body?
Also solar plexus, kind of chest area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'm noticing that the hands are getting involved with this.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do that, does that have any impact on that experience? What happens when you do that?
Yeah. When I move my hands, my body, it feels like the energy is just all around here.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
so that moves. Feels good to do that with your hands?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's movement. It's flow.
And I'm noticing that it started like this and now it's doing something a little different. Yeah. So what's happening now? How is that going?
A little bit of a dance, a little bit of a movement.
A little dance, and the body is now getting involved. Yeah. And so as you're noticing, looking at Millie, noticing that relaxation and the love and the hands want to get involved and the body's starting to do stuff, what else are you noticing that goes with that?
A sense of playfulness. It's just a sense of just a sense of kind of being and comfort and
and I noticed that something happened with the head and the neck. It's kind of loosened up a little and the head's lifting a little. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
For you for noticing.
You guys notice that? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So is this an okay place to stop in playfulness? It sounds like a good place to maybe like let you be in playfulness. Feel free to turn off your camera and move around in any way you want
and dance
dance if that's what you want. Because the whole point of this demonstration, thank you very much, by the way, is to show how people are different. So we're going to do it again with someone else. So now that you see what it's like, maybe someone else will be very brave. Thank you, Annika. Anyone else want to do the same experiment, but with you in a unique way? Oh, we got another one. Okay, excellent. Bianca.
Hi.
Hi. So how are you feeling now that you're on the spot?
So even when Annika raised her hand already, I felt nervous at that point. So now I'm like doubly nervous. So I'm feeling it more in my chest. And I can definitely notice my heart beating faster, and a restlessness, like an internal restlessness. So my fingers are also tingling a bit, and like a tightness, a stiffness in the body, like a holding. Actually, I'm doing this with my hands.
Speaking of your hands, would it be okay if we like backed up a little so that I can see a little bit more of you?
I have a wall behind me, so
okay. You just push your screen forward a little.
Okay.
Yeah, great. Excellent. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing that Annika did, which is like, you know, looking around where you are right now. Is there any object in the room that is particularly meaningful to you, or is there something that you're wearing or a color, or anything in your experience that, you know, feels good, feels nourishing, feels like what you need right now?
So there was something I was going to say, but I'm going to say something different because I was going to say my cat, which is quite similar to what Annika was saying. But so this jersey I'm wearing is really soft and one of my favorite jerseys. So wearing it feels quite comforting and nourishing.
And so you have this jersey on. And I noticed that as soon as you mentioned it, you wanted to touch it. So your hands are involved too.
Yes.
And so when you notice that jersey and you touch it, what happens?
I think it helps to soften the internal. So the jersey itself feels really soft, and that almost just flows inward. So it's strange. It's like, so one thing Annika said was when she had her dog on her lap, she felt loved. And I'm not sure you can feel loved by a jersey, but there is this sense of comfort. There is this sense of being held, like, you know, this something wrapped around you, this warmth. So it's a similar being held kind of feeling.
And so I'm noticing the hands also kind of like doing this. And so similarly, is that having any effect on you as you move your hands, being held? Does that bring up any images that are being held?
I think it's also, well, you don't feel so alone. So that leads to less vulnerability. So like when I'm doing this, I'm feeling a little bit more protected, I guess. You know, even that process of pushing the screen away has given me a sense of relief. Like you guys aren't all in my face anymore. So maybe this hand thing is creating some distance. I don't know, from all of you. I'm feeling, I'm not feeling so threatened anymore.
Yeah. And so having a like, hey guys, back up a little, I need a little space. Like that actually has an effect on the nervous system, just pushing us back a little. Maybe everyone else, if you might want to try just pushing your screen back and just seeing if that's like comforting to you, or whether you're like, wait, no, come back. You know, so you can play with the screen distance. Awesome. And so you're feeling a little more comforted, a little more held, also protected, and also a little bit more space. That there was something about getting a little bit more space, even with the hand, that felt a little bit more comforting. And so as I say all of that back to you, what do you notice that goes with that?
Well, I mean, space, that's like, I mean, that's something we strive for, isn't it? I mean, I mean, I guess on a much more intense level, that's something I struggle with, is to have space. So when I have it, like now, it's very settling and reassuring.
So what else would help? Do you feel like you have enough space? Do you need more? Do we need to push back a little more?
No, this is fine. This is good. This is good.
And how do you know
I think I would feel disconnected. I know that because the body is feeling more settled. So the tingling in my hands is gone, you know, from touching the jersey. And also my heartbeat has definitely slowed down. I think that's also from talking through things. So it's not only just from the jersey, but yeah, I guess I feel calmer and less threatened.
And you said something really interesting. You said, you know, that the space was comforting, and I asked, like, well, maybe you need more. And you said, no, I would feel too disconnected. So I'm wondering, like, if we can actually check that out and see if that's true. Like, you feel like this is the right distance, but I'm just wondering, like, you know, if we went back a little further, what would disconnected, like, how would you know that you felt more disconnected?
So now where you're sitting, I can't really see the face so well anymore. So everybody's heads are just like little pinpricks. So I'm losing sense of community, like I'm losing sense of people, like I'm not seeing your humanity anymore, like you're just looking like dots on the screen.
And so let's go back to what feels better. So do I need to move forward? Are you going to move forward? You're going to move forward.
Well, I can move my computer forward. Yeah, that feels good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're good. And how do you know that you're good? How do you know this is the optimal amount of space and comfort that you?
So I feel settled internally, like I'm not noticing an increased heart rate. I'm not noticing tingles in my hand. Like physically, my body is feeling okay and calm.
Okay. Is this an okay place to leave you in calm and okayness?
Yes. With my jersey.
So thank you guys. I know I also felt pretty nervous about this whole thing, but I think that hopefully we've painted the picture that I couldn't possibly have known any of that stuff, even no matter how many, you know, trauma-informed mindfulness classes I take. I couldn't have never guessed what was going to be good for them, you know, what was going to be regulating for them. And they actually know way better than I do. And that's not because they're mindfulness teachers. It's because they're people who've lived in their own bodies longer than I have. So, you know, like there are already things that are already immediately available to help regulate people's nervous systems. And it's probably not meditation, or it doesn't have to be meditation right away. And so, you know, starting with those things is already teaching them a lot of the, like, you know, using attention to notice what is the most regulating to you. And, you know, we already know that, you know, giving people the breath to follow is like, you have a 50-50 chance of it, you know, not working. So why not ask them rather than us having the answers? So that's kind of the main, one of the main things that I wanted to kind of convey for now. We can circle back. I'm sure there are lots of questions, and maybe we can move on to Paula if she is here.
Thanks, Willoughby. Yeah. Yes, Paula. Welcome, Paula.
Hey, Mandy. Thank you. Willoughby, thank you so much for that. And the ones who participated, yeah, that takes courage. So, yeah, so good to be here with you all. I'm Paula Ramírez. And I have been working, and I really appreciate that Willoughby brought this about trauma and her not calling it so much trauma sensitive, but diversity informed. As the work that I've been doing, I work with the UN, with a UN agency, which is UNFPA. And I am supporting the teams in charge of mental health in the different places in the field, in different refugee camps in the world. And I specifically work with mental health people that work for supporting gender-based violence survivors. And since the pandemic started, we have worked in Yemen, Afghanistan, Iraq, Bangladesh, Nigeria, Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Myanmar, and it has been a ride. It has been a ride. I had lived in the field, in the camps before the pandemic, and now from home and having like access to such amount of diversity, I feel that there's something that that really has caught my attention, that goes like from all over the countries when talking about mindfulness, and is as if it was another thing to do. Yes, as if yoga or mindfulness could be one more thing that I need to put in my to-do list to see if someday maybe I can feel better. And only that has meant, yeah, like has put me in a very different place in regards to the practice. And I started thinking about that and feeling like, what is it? What is it that the practice is truly giving? Yes, if the call that UNFPA and working with gender-based violence, like there's this slogan that is called bodily autonomy. If bodily autonomy is what we want to enhance with people, but people feel that mindfulness is another thing that they need to do, how is that autonomy working? And when I started thinking about this was in South Sudan. We were in the capital, in Juba, and we had to move to another town, which is called Capoeta, in a car. And there was a person in that car that he had flew away from Capoeta, from his hometown, many years ago because of an armed attack. So he had lived in Juba, in the capital, for many years. And it was the first time that he was going back to see his land, his family, his people. And we were in the car and we arrived there. We were giving some food and doing some stuff that we needed to do in Capoeta. And when we were going back to the capital, to Juba, this guy, one of the persons that was in the car, the one that I just told you about, that he went back to his place and his land, he asked for the car to be stopped. And we were like, but you mean now? And he was like, yes, I need you to stop. And we thought that we maybe needed to pee or something. So the car stopped and the guy went to the floor. He lay down with his chest to the floor and he stayed there for a couple of minutes. He stayed there for a couple of minutes breathing. And we all were like, what is this guy doing? And when he came up to the car, we asked him, like, what were you doing? And he said something like, there are many pieces of myself that are still back there in Capoeta. It's as if he was catching up with his soul. It's as if he, like that act of coming to the floor and waiting, he just waited. And he just breathed there with his chest on the floor so that he could feel integrated again. And I was like, wow, this is so powerful. Yes. And I thought about myself, like a person that is working for mindfulness for the UN, and I kept living experiences and I kept living one thing and the other and the other and the other with no time for integration. And mindfulness, again, another thing that I had to do myself, but really no, like, not really a place of dignity for myself. And that has shifted everything in the past 2 years. Somehow, like, that last experience before the pandemic and being in the field, and that happened. And then in the field, when I work with people that support gender-based survivors, there's like this huge amount of guilt, like self-care. Am I entitled to self-care? And so the practice, really, the diversity informed aspect of it has landed into one of the persons from Yemen called it the revolutionary act of non-doing. It was so funny because with the group in Yemen, I started doing the 8 weeks MBSR, and at some point in session 2 or something, they were in the middle of Ramadan, and they said, well, what if we use these sessions to break fasting at night? And it was like, of course, let's use the session to break fasting. Like, let's do that. And we went into chanting, into breaking the fasting, into really perceiving how is it to fast? Why is it that fasting happens? How is it to break it? What's the ritual? And as Willoughby said, like, there are things that I couldn't have known. But what really mindfulness has brought for me is like something that I have organized somehow in my mind like this, is the first thing that needs to happen is restoration. And is if people come to the sessions and if they need to sleep, so be it. You know, if they come and they come to sleep, or if they come and they come while cooking for their children, or if they come while being in the bus, that's their place of dignity. Yes, it's like, what if you come with no posture, with no idea of anything, and you allow yourself to be as you are? With COVID, no COVID, in the bus, with your children, cooking. And that has, yeah, that has meant like to touch this place of restoration. And when there's restoration, what I feel is that there's this possibility of integrating. Yes, of like, oh, okay, when I restore my nervous system, when I know that I don't have to sit in a certain way, that I don't have to be in a certain place, that mindfulness is just for me to be in full dignity of who I am, then integration can happen. Yes, and then connection and safety can happen. If we think about the nervous system, it's always looking for cues of safety. Yes, and yes, if I feel that I can come to this place to restore, and then I have time to integrate, then it's possible to feel safe, to understand like, oh, well, maybe in full dignity, I'm going to go to that session and sleep. And then bodily autonomy comes. Then autonomy comes. Then the possibility of that we talk so much about when working with gender-based violence, the bodily autonomy makes sense. And that's the place where diversity-informed mindfulness practice has taken me and us in this research that we have done the past years. And this is a little bit of what I wanted to share with you before perhaps jumping into a short practice together. Yes, if we could give room to integrate everything that has been said. Yes, Mandy shared her story, and I'm sure that many of you can relate to that story in your own way. And then Willoughby and her resourcing practice. And what if we catch up with our souls? Yeah, so just noticing where you're at in this moment. Yes, and I see Mandy moving. If you perhaps need any movement, if you wish to be here with your eyes opened or closed, or if suddenly you feel like perhaps laying down. So how it would be to call for that autonomy? Yes, like, what is it that I need in this moment? And giving time for perhaps the body or your breath or birds outside or whatever to tell you, like, what is it that you need in this moment? And there's something that has been very useful for the groups that I have worked with. So feel free to follow if you feel like it. Which is exploring the relation with gravity. Yeah, so if possible, just allowing there in whatever position you're at, if you happen to be cooking for your children, as it is 9 time, or doing whatever it is that you're doing, how it would be for a moment perhaps to perceive the relation that you're having with gravity in this moment. There's an amazing ally that I find in this diversity informed that applies to most of us, which is our jaw. So the jaw, like being a place of, oh, okay, am I holding? How am I connecting to gravity? And perhaps allowing the tongue to have space inside your mouth. Noticing the upper teeth and the lower teeth. And noticing if only that movement may have made a shift in the neck, in the shoulders, maybe it didn't. But this possibility of perceiving oneself in the present moment in this way, in relation to gravity, again, can happen in any place, at any moment. And perhaps feeling the sole of the feet or the seat bones. And how it is to notice that you are being held. And noticing what else it's around in your experience. Noticing what's around, perhaps orienting to the space that you're in. So how is it that that living organism that you are, each one of you here, is part of gravity and as well part of that space that you inhabit in this moment, in South Africa, in Vermont, in Spain, or wherever you are. Mm. And taking the time just to notice again and make any shifts that you may need in this call for restoration, for autonomy. And just so you know, you can stay here for the next minute and a half together, just sharing possibility of being together with our beings and knowing that there are 70 people connected in this room. And that whatever you bring, it's possible, it's welcome. And again, giving room to landing into your experience of what Mandy shared, what Willoughby shared, what I shared. How is it to integrate? What's still alive in you of what was said? Bringing this that Willoughby said of, I don't know what each one of you may need at this moment. And it's okay if you don't either. It's possible to just stay, for some of us, with that complexity of, I really don't know what I need. But noticing, resourcing around, again, noticing the place that you're in. Yeah, and as we move towards the end of this short practice, if you had your eyes closed, perhaps allowing your eyelids to open and bring light, and with light shade and shape. And if possible, connecting to the group. Yes, to the people. Possible to, as well, and as part of integration, this thing of virtuality. Yes, that we end up being a bunch of people in a room and we don't know who's there. So what if we just allow to move our our gaze and see the people that are here. Noticing how that feels. Oh, Mbuyi, hey! Now I'm seeing some friends around. And the ones that don't have their video on, it's as well absolutely fine, but as well making them part, yes, as we go through. This possibility of connection. The nervous system always asking, am I safe? Safety comes with connection. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much, Paula. That was, I'm sure everybody in the room can feel a sense of your sincerity and your beauty and your heart. I certainly can. So thank you so much. And I know you're not feeling all that well today. You mentioned that. So thank you for coming through anyway. It was really beautiful.
Of course.
We have scheduled it in a way that we're going to have some time for questions, and I see there are some questions and comments here already around some of the things, especially around complex PTSD and people that have been abused in childhood, young adulthood, and what that looks like. And one of the questions was specifically addressed to me, so I thought, in some way, before we open to other questions, I'd like to answer that for you and see if I can not make too much of a hash of it, of how it's supported me. I think over the years of practicing, the thing that worked with me in adult children and in this complex PTSD that you name here, I have to learn how to become, they call it to become your own loving inner parent, which just means being able to self-soothe in a way that is self-directed, self-soothing. Instead of what most adult children do is self-destructive in one way or another, but self-soothing is practicing a tenderness and a kindness for an inner child that was hurt and wounded. And even although we're in these big bodies and we all, intelligent beings and we walk around and we have jobs and degrees, but we're also children inside here. There's also a child in here that has been hurt. And I'm aware that when I work with clients and when we've worked in groups in the past, the thing that works for me the most is to have a picture of you at the age of 6. And to keep that handy. So I ask my clients around halfway of the sessions for them to reveal their 6-year-old picture. And it's just such a beautiful session around what that little person was about, what got lost, does it still exist, and to build from there. And that's helped me a lot with trauma. And this ability, I think Willoughby in the work that she's doing and the resourcing, I think it's such a powerful way too of also recognizing that there's no failure in not getting it right. I used to try so hard at mindfulness and want to study everything. And I mean, I know some of my early teachers and some of them are in this room. I just wanted to be the best mindfulness person that there was. I wanted to do it right and learn everything. And it's just that perfectionism in me that's driving. And it's part of the shame-based way that adult children and people with trauma live, that shame is constantly there, that somehow you don't measure up or somehow you're not enough. So yeah, I would answer the question here that's helped me the most is self-compassion, soothing practices, shorter practices for sure. I don't think I could ever go on a long retreat again. And I mean, that's quite a bombshell to drop here as a supervisor, but I don't think I could do 10 days silent again. I just don't think I have the capacity for it, if I'm honest. But I can do a lot of short practices and I can do a lot of informal practices, and I like body-based practices, walking meditations, movement. These things have really helped me. So I hope that answers the question a little bit, and you're welcome to, I've taken some of the details down. You're welcome to email me or check in with me. I'm very happy to talk to you guys, whoever needs anything after this session. I'll make myself available. You can just email me. So maybe some other questions, and maybe that'll give Willoughby also an opportunity to bring some of the body of knowledge that you have, Willoughby, and how much, you helped me in those groups, and some of the things that I saw in those groups around how, how it can really debilitate some people. That might be useful to actually share also in terms of answering this question.
Would it be okay if I kind of tag team on you with the complex PTSD?
Yeah.
A couple different thoughts. I mean, I think, that term can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. One, so with the general caveat that like everything I say does not apply to everyone, but often the dynamic of early trauma is one of inescapable threat. So having a parent that is, flies off the handle and gets really angry every now and then is inescapable. Having a parent that has a mental illness or a substance problem or a job that keeps them away from you, or having, there's so many different ways that like this sort of inescapable threat can show up, some of which sort of meets criteria for trauma and some of it doesn't, which is why I don't like that word. But in any case, there can be a tendency towards, not having a fight or flight reaction available. So for example, so often our natural mammalian response to threat is to have this huge sympathetic nervous system activation in terms of a fight or flight response. And that tends to resolve without kind of complications. And when that's not available because we're small and we're children and we can't run away from home because where are we going to go? And we can't fight our parents because we're small and it's also our parents. So there's these social reasons why we're not able to have a fight or flight response. We have very adaptive ways of coping with that often, which is kind of to go deep inside or to go up. Sort of various kinds of dissociative responses, sometimes absorption-based ones, and sometimes, more disconnected ones like depersonalization. And so, and what that represents is, we have fight, flight, and freeze. So those responses would be a freeze response. So all of that, fast forward to now we're teaching meditation, mindfulness-based stress reduction type meditation to people with, this kind of history. And we're asking them to sit still with their eyes closed. So the immobility itself is already a problem. And asking them to do anything where they are trying, again, this power dynamic that we're asking them to do something. They're already experts at trying to figure out, like, how do I get an A in this? How do I avoid punishment? How do I they're already experts in navigating the social dynamic. And so, any way that we have, we're asking them to do anything, they're going to do it no matter what it is. And so we have to be really careful to sort of let's not ask them to do anything. Let's back up and say, actually give them that permission to notice what is already resourcing for them. And so with Annika and Bianca as examples, Annika went in the direction of playfulness. That was where her organism wanted to go. And Bianca went in the direction of needing space. And I think if we spent, another 45 minutes just with each of them alone, we would learn a lot about, their past history and where that's coming from and why that's what they need. So, but, we don't need to know their history right now. We can just start with, and I know for a lot of places that offer these programs, we're not actually allowed. It's not always a medical clinical setting, and not everybody has medical and clinical training. And so we're not allowed to ask about their trauma history or give them a big, clinical interview and that kind of thing. We kind of they come in the door and we just have to be ready for whatever shows up, like in schools or businesses or whatever. So, what I did with Annika and Bianca was already I was ready. They have complex PTSD. What I did was ready for that. because they're already choosing what's good for them, and I'm not imposing anything on them that is going to be destabilizing. So that's just, you know, one piece. And the other piece is that, and this is really just to bounce off of the immobility issue, is that there are just a lot of things that, you know, sort of standard mindfulness, like the aspects of standard mindfulness, like a lot of people are going to have reactions to the way that that is taught, because it is kind of a system that has certain things that you do. So sitting still, for example, you know, induces a freeze response and a trauma response in a lot of different people. Focusing on the breath, we found that more than half of people, when given the option, would prefer not to focus on the breath at all, which of course is the, you know, the main thing that all meditation programs and apps use. So, you know, just the systematic way that it's like used is not going to work for everyone. So is there an object in the room or in the, you know, and often a lot of people with a trauma history, nothing in the body is safe. So, you know, assuming, which often a lot of mindfulness programs do, that like the body is safe, the mind, I don't know, but the body is safe. That doesn't apply to everyone. And so instead of trying to learn all the trauma-informed principles, you can do that, but like, it's a shortcut to just start with like what, you know, asking the person, they already know pretty well, like what is and is not safe for them already. So I've given lots and lots of trainings to MBSR teachers, and many of them have ended up halfway through the training with everyone having a panic attack, because they're like, there's so much to know. How am I ever going to know all this? And so I want to sort of redo it again and say, you don't actually have to know everything. All you have to know is like just holding space for this person to be able to use their own attention and their own, you know, awareness to be able to start tuning in what's helpful for them. So that's all.
Thank you, Willoughby. That's a lot, and it's beautiful. Yeah. I think this tuning into and wisdom of us knowing what we need. It's interesting for me at this age to still be scared to perhaps step out of line, or maybe I'm not doing it right. Still that these thoughts exist, you know, it's very interesting to watch that. And I think what I've learned mostly from Willoughby and sharing just that time that we shared together, the three of us, was that it's okay to do what's good for you, that there's permission. Permission is given to be yourself and to own yourself in a different way, which I found, I mean, I know that, you know, but it still sits there. So thank you for that. Paula, is there anything else you'd like to, any other questions, guys? You can just keep them coming, and thank you for all the things that you're posting here. And if in any way, anything that has happened has fallen short, please forgive us. We are trusting emergence, and it's all from love. Yeah, thank you. Paula, anything that you want to add, and then I can.
No, I just feel this of underlining somehow for me how important it has been for people to let go of another thing to do. Like, yeah, and this, what you're saying, like we are allowed to be whatever, even with not knowing, like even if it's possible to come and be together and say, okay, this is where am I in this moment, this is a place where I'm at, and it's possible to share that in the collective.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I know there's a part of each human being, I'll speak for myself, that kind of wants a few points at the end of a talk that you can kind of say, okay, well, I've learned one or two or three things. So after my time with Willoughby and also with Paula, I sat after that session, and I really felt into what have I learned about trauma-informed or diversity-informed practice? What do I as a teacher or a coach bring to my sessions? What would be trauma-informed? having chatted to some clients, I've got the following thing. So there's Elizabeth wants to say something, and I see that Batubile, you want to say something. Do you guys want to come into the session? Please feel free.
Evening, everyone. Hi.
Evening. Hi.
I am not going to switch on the video because I look a mess. So
that's autonomy.
That screen right there is going to stay like that.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much. I've been freed from something that I've been battling with, and that is, even if you do the little bit, because now it's starting to feel like the practices and everything is just another task to do. And I have a lot of tasks to do. You know, and if I think about it, especially after my father passed, I've had a lot of tasks to do. And it just feels like I have to practice, and then that gets me down, and then I don't do it. So thank you for, I think it was Paula that said, I can't remember who it was. Even when you're cooking, I know it's more like the informal practice of it, but it's okay, Tobes. It's okay if you didn't do the 45 minutes. It's okay if you didn't even get through the 10 minutes. You did something though. And thanks so much. That really, really freed me. I thought I had to be perfect.
Thank you. Thank you, Batubile. I mean, I think for me, I remember Eckhart Tolle saying, one full in-breath and one full exhale is a meditation in itself. So you can just do that from moment to moment every now and then. One full inhalation, one full exhalation. Thank you. I really relate. Elizabeth, do you want to pop into the session? And feel free to not put your camera on or put your camera on.
If you don't mind, I'm not going to.
No problem. No problem. No problem.
It's been a long day. But just to jump in and say that I've been fortunate in terms of the way meditation was taught to me, the way it was introduced to me, having done quite a number of secular courses and then embracing Buddhism just before COVID. I mean, that's what sort of really kept me sane for the last 2 years. And in Buddhism, there's no question of permission being granted. There's no question of a list of tasks or a particular posture or a place or even a state of mind that you need to cultivate. What I loved about Buddhism, and I still do to this day, is that it's all an invitation. Beautiful. It's an invitation, and it's within your autonomy to take that invitation in whatever way you feel comfortable to do so, and to stop, leave, come back, drop into the space, whatever is safe for you at that time, whether you feel traumatized or not. I mean, I know that, you know, we are here to talk about trauma, but what I found helpful is to distinguish between what I call trauma with a small t, almost as though trauma is on a continuum. And for many of us, and I would say, you know, as a black woman, because of my gender, because of my color, whatever, I mean, life is already traumatic, if you know what I mean. We're swimming in traumatic waters. So, you know, specific events, or, I mean, being born is traumatic, to be honest. So, you know what I mean? So what I'm trying to say is that you can have those big T trauma incidents of rape, PTSD, war, conflict. You know, we live in Africa, and many of us have been through those situations. And I've worked with refugees for many years as well. So there's that vicarious trauma that comes from being in that humanitarian or help mode all the time until the trauma becomes really normalized. And I didn't realize I was traumatized until I went to sort of so-called civilized country. It was when I got to Geneva that I broke down. And
so it had a huge impact on you when your nervous system was put into a place where you didn't immediately access trauma in the way that you used to.
No, and that's because when I was in the field, I felt like, you know, I'm supposed to be the hero here. Who am I to complain about anything? Because I'm helping people who are in a much, much worse situation, for God's sake. You know, people without shelter, food, medical assistance, even clean water. So there was no way I was going to start going off to my HR or my GP, my doctor, or whoever to seek help, because that just makes you feel like a crybaby. You know, who are you to complain about?
It's so interesting, Elizabeth, because I think that's what Paula was saying earlier. Who am I to practice that self-care? And that's what you're naming. And one of the interesting things that you've just reminded me of is the invitational nature of everything that we do as teachers, facilitators, through your deep Buddhist religious practice that you've learned, cultivated.
Thank you for understanding, and it's really lovely to hear about everything that you've been through, and I wish you guys all the best. One last thing, sorry, I must say about the I think what Paula was talking about, the sort of earth touching, the pull of gravity, and being able to situate ourselves within that. And that's also been a very, very important aspect of my meditation for me, because through the walking meditation, for example, and being able to feel held by the earth, being part of that universal body of sensations and feelings and emotions, and you know, it's a bit like that metta bhavana, the philosophy of loving kindness, that everything is, you know, is in the ether, it's in the air, it's what we breathe. So that feeling of gravity is a bit, again, like that continuum that I just mentioned of trauma. You're on that line of where space and time become almost meaningless. You know, you're in this moment right now, today.
Correct. So you had an experience of that through Paula, again, the practice that she did around the gravity and feeling that interbeing, interconnectedness. Thank you for
interbeing, exactly, the Tiknatana, interbeing. So beautiful. Thank you so much, Paula, and Willoughby, and yourself, Mandy, everybody. I've really enjoyed and learned a lot today. And you made me remember, you reminded me of why mindfulness is so important, and meditation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in with your wisdom and insight. It was so useful. And I'm aware, I think one of the things of holding safe containers is to be on time. And I'm aware that it's 9 o'clock. So I'm going to extend a email through to Janine and to IMISA. We'll have all of our different emails. You can always come through me if you'd like. I know Willoughby and Paula, you're much more busy than I am right now. So I'm happy to answer any other questions. Yeah, just maybe we could just end with a few moments of just closing the eyes.
Mandy, I don't think we can hear you.
Mandy, I think maybe your speaker has come unplugged, or your mic.
hear me now?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, beautiful. Yeah, just to take a moment, I'd like to just close off, just taking a moment just to feel into the body, feel into the heart. Also just like to bring some appreciation to Willoughby and Paula for sharing so courageously and bringing their wisdom. And to appreciate all of you, to appreciate IMISA and the work that they do. And mostly just to get a sense of appreciating yourself for showing up tonight. So thank you, everyone. It's been such a wonderful evening, I hope. And we will all be in touch. You've got my email address, and I'll send any questions or anything that you need through to Willoughby and I call it a little team now, actually, of diversity informed practice. So Willoughby, we'll see you soon. Paula, we'll see you soon. The rest of you will see you soon. Sending lots of love to everyone.
Thank you, Mandy, Willoughby, and Paula. It's been a wonderful session.
Thank you so much.